Hi Judith, how are you today?
Hello, David. Good, thank you. Are you well?
Yes, very well, thank you. And so we had a conversation a few weeks ago now, and
Mhm.
it's quite an interesting one because most people contact me because they're seeking realization, but within a few moments it became apparent that there was already realization. So it was quite unique in that way. So yeah, let's just have a conversation about that because I just really like the idea of people being able to see the ease of realization and also living examples of that. So yeah, if you could just begin with with your story, really, just your maybe your early childhood and events that started to unfold there.
Sure. Um, from an early age, I eh, thought this is not something's not right. Who am I and why am I here? It was my whole question when I was little,
Mm.
and I was actually quite stressed. I didn't like school very much. I was always very creative. Always dabbled in creativity, making clothes or creating gardens or painting or cooking. Anything creative had my interest,
Yes.
held my interest. And so my first experience, I think, of kind of peacefulness and all of that was at the age of 26. I came across a yoga class and I thought, I must do that. So I went in and had a couple of lessons with this lady, and I came out floating. I thought, this
Mm.
is great. I'm not stressed. I actually feel okay. But then life takes over, and one thing and another, and I got married and had a child and created a beautiful home and absolutely loved my garden.
Mm.
Where I planted everything. And I would leap out of bed early morning to catch the dawn in the garden, and it just was my absolute joy. And I noticed at that time that there was something missing. It was Everything was lovely. I had everything, but there was something missing.
Mm.
And that something missing was me. But I didn't understand it then. And soon after that, I began yoga again. And this is, probably about 20 years later.
Yes.
So I began yoga again. And at that time, I was also painting. And I had this experience, I call it an experience, where I fell back into myself and everything opened up. My heart opened up and everything opened up. And where I felt expansive beyond the boundaries of my body, and I felt like I'm home.
Yes.
That's what it felt like. But there was also a lot of instability because on the one hand, my life was falling apart, and on the other hand, it was falling together. But I didn't have anyone to guide me through that, um, the emotional part of it.
Yes.
So I actually literally had to understand it within myself, and it caused a lot of upset in the family, and with the breakup of the relationship and all of that. And the years that followed were really me by myself integrating
Yes.
all of these changes that had happened. And then a few years later, I did an arts degree. So I went back to college, and there I came across painters such as Agnes Martin who, when watching in art history, when watching a video of hers, an interview of hers, I recognized the innocence and the purity and the stillness in her paintings. And then at the same time, we went to the National Gallery of Victoria with college, and I stood in front of a Rothko painting. And that I was mesmerized. It was large and I was drawn into it. So it's different seeing a painting, in a book or something, but when you're standing in front of it,
Yes.
It was so moving. It really grabbed me. It was moving. And it was after that I actually realized it's all me. The love that I experienced, the depth of that was me. The absorption in these paintings, it's me.
Yes.
And that's when I just got up and I thought, I'm just gonna live, because it's all me, and the joy and so then I could understand the experiences that I had in the past. I understood my past more, from a different perspective, from a higher perspective. I was able to see them, everything that had taken place in my life, from a much higher perspective, that it was all for me to realize who I truly am.
Yes.
And
so did the art collapse that sense of duality? Is it standing in front of those paintings?
I'd say so,
The
yes.
subject-object mode collapsed so that there was just unity consciousness.
Yes, I'd say so. At the time, it didn't occur to me that that's what it was.
Yes.
It was just a knowing, and there was no mentalization of it.
No. It's interesting that your story is very similar to most people I speak with, which is that they quite often feel as though this world isn't their home, that they don't really understand what they're doing here. It feels quite an alien experience. They don't really feel compatible with many people, so they tend to be creating it because that's what they do instead. And the world's going on, and they're kind of independent of that, and so it's a common theme. I would say that theme applies to virtually everyone I've ever spoken with. So it's not unusual. Yours is a unique story in the way that it presented itself to you. There was obviously spiritual depth there, and then the triggering through the art was was something which happened. But lots of people actually take part in creative things, especially art, because it actually takes consciousness from the mind into effortless being, and there's a relief from the thought stream, and then we begin to flow in a really spontaneous and intuitive way, which is just much nicer, and it starts to feel natural. So lots of the boundaries. Another element is that most people I speak with didn't really like school very much. That's a common theme as well, because the whole kind of logic, sort of building on the logical mind and making the logical mind predominant is something which also it has never really fitted very well with those who are really honestly seeking realization. So yeah, it's amazing that everyone's story is totally unique, but there are certain themes which run through quite a few of them.
Yeah, I didn't know that I was ever seeking realization.
No.
I knew that there was something that was not quite right.
Yes.
That was missing.
Yes.
Something was missing. And yes.
Well, with some people, there's realization is actually carried through into this lifetime. So people like Krishnamurti, he was realized at a very, very early age. And so with lots of people, with myself, the subject object mode, the identification with the human realm of experience didn't fully and correctly install. So there's always this questioning, because you're seeing this, it's almost, you see the human experience as being a kind of play, and that's what it is ultimately. It's Maya. So but the sense of gravity and reality that lots of people have never really gets installed. So we're sat on the sidelines a bit in some way until there's realization. But then there's total integration then, because what you notice is that there's a level of unity and a level of love and a depth which we knew on some level was available, but we just didn't know where it was. But it definitely isn't available in the mainstream channels of experience.
Yes, yes, that's true, because I knew all along that something wasn't quite right, and I just didn't know where to find it.
Yes.
As you said, yes. And so when I did find it, it was like, oh my gosh, it wasn't an experience, it was just a knowing.
Yes. Yeah, that's really clear. That's good.
That this is it, this is, it's been here all this time.
Yes.
And that nothing that actually happened on the outside was relative to it. Almost, it was, I don't know how to even explain that, but
and it presents itself effortlessly too, because the seeking in one way is one aspect, but the seeking doesn't actually take us to realization. But there's something which is unfolding, and you seem to have a very calm manner, and it seems as though things just came to you rather than it being a frantic search or for it to be really emotionally disturbing. So that's that's quite interesting. But you obviously had a few challenges, as you were saying, within your family experience, and so they do need to be integrated. But yeah, it's quite the whole integration process. I think in some ways, being in kind of normal human life can seem quite challenging. So lots of people do kind of withdraw into a more personal experience, and that's really where we have the opportunity to find our true nature. Actually there's a quotation by a poet called Andrew Marvell, and he says, "Mistaken long I sought you then in busy companies of men." And that's the realization, I think. People are looking into the world to begin with, and then they realize actually what they're looking for is within themselves.
Yes, exactly. True. And so relationships were difficult for me because of it.
Yes.
Because I was quite content within myself.
Yes.
And found to be self-sufficient.
Yes. And is that can be challenging also for some people, because if lots of people, if their activity is based on things like effort, hard work, striving, those kind of things, then if you're just fairly calm and settled, that can be quite threatening to in some ways.
Yes.
Because it's challenging. You're just quietly challenging their value system without actually doing or saying anything, which can be infuriating sometimes.
Yeah, you nailed it. That's exactly what I experienced, because it was like, why aren't you doing more? Why aren't you pushing and shoving? And it's like, well, that's really silly. To
Mm.
me, that was like, why would you do that?
Yes.
Um, so I certainly noticed that. I certainly
Yes.
noticed that that was what was out there, and I couldn't figure out why it was
Yes.
a way of being when there was
Mm.
such peace and
Yes.
stability within,
Yeah.
and as you said, the effortless being, um, which is what I detected in Agnes Martin, the video
Yes.
interview that I saw of hers, where she said she sits until the and waits until the fully formed image comes into her mind, and
Right.
then she
Yes.
paints.
Right.
And so to me, that is stillness, where you
Yes.
actually effortlessly, it's there, you can
Yes.
access it. And so that's what resonated with me
Yes.
through the whole process of, it's there for everyone to access. So it's not
Yes.
a matter of just, for realization is not just for some of us, it's for everyone if they want it.
Yes.
But to actually be present and still and silent sometimes
Yes.
until this it rises, or it reveals itself.
Yes. And so quite often people find that worldly experiences aren't so much available to them either. So sometimes where the whole purpose of life is realization, but someone hasn't recognized that fully yet. So they're
Mm,
trying things in the world, and quite often those things don't come to fruition. Even though the people are really intelligent and very focused and organized, there's something which is keeping them away from that sort of worldly entanglement. So after a while, that kind of directs people to quite a simple way of being, and
mm,
so that can be quite challenging at sometimes, just because our whole education system guides us in a particular direction, which is to do with effort and competition and all those things. So it can be quite a transformational journey to realize that the way we can function most effectively is totally opposite to the way we've been taught. So
mm.
it's
Yes,
but we
very much.
usually but we usually bang our heads against the wall for a while before it registers with us.
Yes, well, I went for another experience, another worldly experience, and which wasn't the best thing,
Mm.
but it actually also showed me through contrast that I was already there.
Yes. Yeah.
That was the gift, because
Yes.
there's always a gift in it all.
Mm.
And it actually showed me through contrast that, no, this is it, and this stillness and stability, because then all the tension and the stress and everything came back, and I thought, hang on a minute, this is not right. Come back. So course correction.
Yes.
And
So did individuality try to reinstall? Because that's quite a common
yes,
theme as well. There can be realization and clarity, and there can be lots of peace and stillness. But then sometimes there is still limitations which need to be dissolved, and they sometimes come forward to be integrated. And so,
yes,
yeah, could you talk a bit more about that, Judith? That's quite interesting, really.
that yes. So in the last experience that I had of going back into experience,
Mm.
um, I lost the stability, because mind tried to reinstate itself. So identity again.
Yes.
And I was fighting it, in terms of no, that's not me. I'm done
Yes.
with that.
Yes.
Um,
Because it's a kind of invitation back into individuality.
yes,
But
it
there's
was.
and it can be quite compelling, really. But yeah, that's anyway. Sorry to interrupt you there.
That's okay. So there were the two, the mind on one hand going, no, we're not sure about this. You haven't finished your work yet. You haven't, and there was me going, yes, I have. I don't have anything more to do, and all I had to do was to actually be still and listen. But it was as if there were two competing factors still going on, and all the time. So I actually went into quite a bit of turmoil through that, and
How did it resolve?
quite a bit of disruption, but it resolved itself because I was able to see the contrast in those two aspects. I was able to see the contrast where the mind aspect was trying to reinstate itself, and there was already stability and there was already presence. And so I could see, that's the contrast.
Yes.
And it was a reflection.
So did the mind subside as a result of that scene, or is there something
No,
that you needed to do?
it didn't subside, it actually integrated in terms of understanding
Yes.
of what it actually is. So from a higher perspective, I was able, again, coming back to stability and stillness and presence, which is my natural way of being.
Yes.
When there is stress or disturbance, it unnerves me.
Yes.
It really unnerves me, and it caused. So twice I experienced that, where I had these great disturbances, and they caused post-traumatic stress disorder.
Yes.
Because it's not my natural state of being.
Yes.
This is how I saw it. And so I was able to actually stabilize myself and get back to clarity. And I think it was about 2018 when I left the workforce and had to come out of that state. And it was like, okay, settle down, get ready, was the clear message that I was hearing. Get back to stability, get ready, and settle down. There's a big change about to around, which is now. And so I actually came back to that place. But the whole time when I was in that state, it was as if there were two of me. There was a very stable aspect of me that was watching everything that was going on.
Yes. But then also there was turbulence in the individual mind.
There was the turbulent experience.
Yes.
That was going on, and the mind couldn't, and there was also the aspect, I was very aware of it, the aspect of me that was stable and watching the whole experience.
Yes.
So even that was a recognition that I was already realized, even though I had this other experience.
Yes.
I was already
totally stable.
I was already realized, and those disturbances don't scare me anymore. And I'm able to actually see that it is possible to still be realized and have other experiences.
Yes.
It's a choice.
Yes.
So it takes a while to actually understand all of that and to.
Yes, it's an invitation, really, because we can we can function from our infinite nature, or we can function from our individual nature. And we, post-realization, there can be invitations back into individuality.
Yes. Yes.
But usually there's a component which is quite disturbing. And that, so that's a little alarm bell, which is saying, are you sure you want to go back there?
Yes. That's what it was, actually. It was, no, I know. No, thank you.
Yeah.
Been there, done that. No, thanks. So
Yeah.
I mean, it's a life of experience, really.
Yes.
That's what life is. So it's
Yes.
experiencing everything fully.
Yes.
And knowing myself fully. So
so how's it been since 2018? Has it been quite stable?
yes, I've been calm and stable, and yeah, there are, there were a little bit of some fears. One fear in particular, that how will I survive, or whatever, this transition or whatever.
Yes.
But that seems to have subsided as well, because I'm looking at everything from a higher perspective now. I suppose there's no higher or lower, but it's from a clearer
Yes.
knowing.
Yeah,
And
it's just not so identified, I guess, really.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And so, yeah, it's so you were born in Ceylon, and then you moved to Australia when you were quite young.
Yes, I was 16 when we moved
Yes.
out, and I mean, I wanted to do art then.
Did you?
But I didn't. I was, my father said, no, you just can't make a living being an artist. Go and get a normal job. So I worked in a bank for 8
Yes.
years or whatever,
Yes.
and just it didn't gel. But so I've done many things. I did interior design, and I did
Yes.
all sorts of things, and I used to always make my clothes. So I was always creative.
Yes.
And I suppose that in itself that's when I was at my happiest, was when I was creating, and it didn't matter what it was. It could have been a garden, it could have been clothes, or anything like that, or painting. It didn't matter, but that's when I was actually connecting to my source energy, or soul, or whatever you want to call it.
And it was just flowing. Yes.
I reckon.
I think you're quite unusual in that there is an innate stability there, which has been there probably since birth, and that could well have triggered a few reactions from people over the years, because it can sometimes be quite threatening, because if people's value system is based on striving, effort, hard work, and the idea that life's a bitch and all of those things, but actually if you're just sitting there calmly, it probably rattles lots of cages.
I think it did, because it was almost it seemed like I was invisible, actually, a lot of the time. I felt like I was invisible.
Yes.
And yet I seemed to rattle people, and I couldn't work that out, where I was mostly invisible, and yet they would be rattled somehow, and it was always my fault, and it was like, I don't understand that. But because I wasn't striving for anything. I wasn't striving to, or competing in any way. And I recognized very clearly when I went back into the workforce that that world was based on competition and striving and achieving, and the lengths that people went to actually do that was mind-boggling to me. It really was, completely.
Well, the whole motivation to try to attain happiness through material items or possessions and things is I mean, it's totally flawed, really. But I think that when, if people see that you're just really happy anyway, and you don't have any of those things, it's bound to raise a few questions. So
Yes.
you've been a catalyst, I think, for a lot of people over the years.
Yes, even when I speak to neighbours, I'd come out and they know I've been an artist, and they almost look at me like in pity. I'm thinking, that's your issue, not mine. Your idea, not mine. So it's really weird. It's
Yeah.
completely upside down, really.
Yes.
This world.
Well, you're not of this world, Judith, that's for certain.
I felt like that so many times. What about you? Did you feel the same way, David?
Oh yeah, really, for, well, for the whole of my life, really, but certainly from a really early age, it just didn't, I remember singing a hymn. There's an Anglican hymn called All Things Bright and Beautiful, and I remember singing that as a little boy and thinking, well, I wonder which world that's about.
That's really funny.
So I think, the invitations into worldly life, lots of people I speak with, they recognized early on that those invitations really weren't very desirable. So we kind of declined them from quite an early age. And but it's what's quite compelling, but it's part of the whole game we play, which is that this is it's a challenge, but it's really cosmic entertainment. So we find ourselves in a domain like this where we don't seem to fit, and then we're trying to make sense of it, and we're trying different things, and but then gradually you realize actually our true infinite nature has been there all along, and so just by aligning with that, then things start to be taken care of. It's when we come here with the alignment with our infinite nature, and there's an element of that still present as as the human experience begins. But then with the education system and the media and the way the whole human experience is presented, especially at the moment, it's pretty obvious that there isn't much happiness to be derived in those realms. So we don't really get too involved in that. But there are lots of lots of people do find creativity to be quite a good solution, because that is functioning from effortless being, that's functioning from the body of wisdom. And it's the more we become familiar with that, it actually makes it even easier to see that engaging the mind and making plans in a worldly sense and striving towards things isn't really ever going to give us the satisfaction we need. It does for some people to some degree. Everyone's experience is totally valid, but it's quite a shortcut really when you don't have all of those needs, because all the striving requires so much effort and strain, and and then the subtlety of life is also missed. The intuition, the telepathy, the love, a sense of unity with all of life. It's the subtlety is overlooked, and everything becomes a commodity.
Yeah, I think we came here with a different purpose.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, there's definitely a transformation in consciousness taking place at the moment, and there are lots of people where there's realization taking place now for lots of people too. And it's because that transformation, it's well, to quote Eckhart Tolle, it's awakening from the dream of identification with form that's taking place, really.
Yes. It certainly was quite an eye-opener to see the contrast. That really solidified it for me.
Yes.
In terms of, no, I'm certainly here for something
Yes.
greater than just that,
Yes.
having those experiences. Now, enough of that.
Yes. Well, I've had conversations with some people where they've had an even more difficult time with integration, and the one lady was actually premature when she was born. She was only 2 pounds when she was born, and someone I spoke with recently has had similar experiences, but quite often they've had they're a kind of very innocent representation sometimes, but they have an even more challenging experience. So it's yeah, but it's gradually what tends to happen is there's a turnaround where you realize that there are lots of aspects of the way this world functions that aren't really on the highest level, and so things which in earlier life it seems as though there's something wrong with us, but gradually you realize that that's not the total picture, really.
Yes, well, I did. I thought there was something wrong with me.
Yes.
Because I was always told, "What's wrong with you? You know, you're," because I didn't fit in.
Yes. Yeah.
I felt like I didn't fit into the family I
Yeah.
was born into.
That's very common as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I certainly didn't feel like I fitted into normal way of competing for everything in life and all of that. I didn't fit in with any of that. Things were easy for me in terms of if I was doing it myself.
Yes.
And doing anything creative and doing it myself, it was easy. But when I had to fit in with others, I felt this is just not, there's something wrong here.
Yes.
So I don't know if that's a common thing, but I certainly wasn't antisocial, but
No.
it seemed a little bit that way. It may have seemed that way to some, but it certainly wasn't that. I really love being with people, actually. I love being with people and interacting, but it became more and more difficult.
Well, you've maintained a level of authenticity, Judith. That's apparent, really, and that you haven't tried to create a persona that people would like, or that people would see as being, worldly. And I think that also is challenging, because lots of people are creating and projecting the self-image into the world. And if you're not, if you're just being as you are, I think that can also be an invitation to review things sometimes.
Yeah, it's different. A different way of being when you're not following the. I was never a follower. That's for sure.
No.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure lots of people are going to resonate with your story, because it's a very interesting one. But you might press a few buttons as well.
I hope not. Or maybe in a good way.
Yeah, definitely.
In a good way.
Yes.
Because it's always good to actually see something that you're not aware of, because then you can resolve it.
Exactly.
That's what I always say. I welcome that.
Yes.
Because then if it hasn't been seen before, if it's something that was hidden, then it should be welcome, because you can actually make the changes.
Yeah, that's great.
Well,
lovely to speak with you, and I wish you well.
Lovely to talk to you too, David. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you too. Okay, bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.